Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is a beautiful Wednesday, August 20th. It's National Radio Day. Shout out to the radio. We have a lot to get into, of course. Big news from around the world of sports as different quarterback situations have officially been resolved. We'll continue our go-around of the NFL today, taking a look-see at the AFC South, as we just have a couple of divisions left with just under 2 weeks to go until NFL kickoff. We are right around the corner. Football season is here, and I could not be more excited for it. We're going to start off with the big news, though. Daniel Jones has officially been named the Colts QB1. This was one of the more interesting quarterback rooms to take a look at throughout all of the regular season. You, of course, had Daniel Jones, who had come over from the Giants and the Vikings last season. He was a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, very similar to Anthony Richardson. Now, this was going to be a memorandum on what kind of thoughts the Colts had on Anthony Richardson. Richardson, of course, was their 5th overall pick just a couple of seasons ago, the same draft class as Bryce Young, as CJ Stroud, as a lot of these very talented quarterbacks that have already come and shown that they deserve to be in this league. Anthony Richardson was always one of those prospects that was a little bit up and down with people because he just did not have that experience. And as we've seen with him, as we've seen with Trey Lance as well, having that experience means a lot. Both of those guys had less than a full season of college football under their belt when they were drafted in the top 5. Both of those guys showed flashes. They had all of the skills, all of the physical traits, and yet they were unable to succeed at the NFL levels for different reasons. Now, Anthony Richardson, when you look at his numbers, not necessarily the worst. He won 8 games in his limited time because of injuries. He was an okay quarterback as far as winning games, but when it comes down to being a great quarterback, the numbers that matter, putting up the yards, especially accuracy, Anthony Richardson just did not have that in the bag. It's something that was his weakest trait by a very large margin. He also just couldn't stay healthy, which is why at the end of the day, this feels like the end of a career for Anthony Richardson. Do I think he's ever going to be on a roster again? Absolutely. In fact, he might even get a chance to start again by the end of this season because Daniel Jones is not a world beater by any stretch of the imagination. A guy that was picked 6th overall by the New York Giants, a guy that has won a playoff game in the past, yes, but even in the year when people were saying that he was at his best in 2022 when he beat the Vikings in the wild card round, took the Giants to the playoffs, to the second round to get demolished by the Eagles en route to a Super Bowl appearance, Daniel Jones really wasn't the one that was carrying that offense. Now, this is by far the best situation he's ever been in. An elite running back, just like he had with Saquon, with Jonathan Taylor to help him out in that situation. The best wide receiver core he's ever had with Michael Pittman, Adonai Mitchell, and that cavalcade of wide receiver threes and Tyler Warren, the rookie tight end. This is by far the best receiving core that Daniel Jones has ever had in his career, as well as the offensive line, the best offensive line that he's had in his entire career. And the Colts, they brought in Lou Anarumo to be their new defensive coordinator. So it's not like this is the end of the world. Indiana Jones at quarterback now. This is something that could work out for them. This is also a play by Shane Steichen to save his own job. Shane Steichen, of course, the head coach on a hot seat right now when it comes to his job. He has not had the most successful run, and the Colts, ever since Andrew Luck, have really struggled to find their quarterback. They put their hitch on the wagon of Anthony Richardson, and as we've seen, it just simply has not worked out for them. Anthony Richardson, someone who phenomenally talented, he pulls off some of the most amazing throws we've ever seen, and I'm a sucker for a guy like that, a guy like Anthony Richardson that can play any single time, any single place, make any single throw from anywhere on the field, but he struggles with the easy ones, and that is at the end of the day why I think Daniel Jones won this job. The underlying numbers for Jones are about the same as they are for Anthony Richardson, but the Colts fans that are getting angry, you knew what you were getting into when you started this season, right? We've seen a lot of mixed emotions from Colts fans online, but Anthony Richardson really wasn't better than Daniel Jones. People don't want Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones isn't good, but when there's a real quarterback controversy between Daniel Jones and the guy that you want to be at quarterback, it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially when you lost that battle. Now, Anthony Richardson might see you get another chance to play. The Colts have a very tough schedule to begin the season. It's not something that I expect them to just snap their fingers, figure out, and, never have to worry again. This is not an easy schedule at all, right? This is something that is going to take some time for them to get used to. You look at that Colts schedule, the Dolphins, the Broncos, the Titans division game, the Rams, the Raiders, who got a lot better to open up their season. That is a lot. That's a couple of playoff teams, a couple of division matchups, a couple of offenses that are very high powered. This is not going to be an easy stretch for them. And maybe at that point, we see a guy like Anthony Richardson come back in. But I think this was the right decision. One thing that Shane Steichen has had the most success with is with a quarterback like Phillip Rivers, a quarterback like Gardner Minshew, a quarterback like Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett was in the MVP conversations with that Shane Steichen offense. There's no reason to believe that with Daniel Jones, who had his best season with a guru at head coach that was calling offensive plays in Brian Dable, a guy that turned Josh Allen into an MVP-style candidate, there's no reason to believe that Daniel Jones can't at least take this team to the heights that they were at when they had Gardner Minshew close to a playoff berth, to the height that they were at when they had Phillip Rivers in the playoffs, right? To the heights that they were at when they had Jacoby Brissett in the playoffs. This is a team that very much could be a fringe playoff squad because they have the weapons. Again, you have Adonai Mitchell, who could turn into something very, very good if he's able to get the game timing up. You have a deep threat in Alec Pierce. You have Michael Pittman, who's just a really solid wide receiver, maybe more of a wide receiver 2 than a true wide receiver 1, but at least you have a lot of these guys that can step up. And of course, Tyler Warren, the rookie, the guy that you draft, and someone that is going to be a huge security blanket to go along with Jonathan Taylor. The best offensive line that Daniel Jones has ever been behind in his career. He fumbles the ball a lot. That's his big issue when he takes sacks. If he can cut down on the turnovers, if he doesn't throw the interceptions, this is a Colts team that could just be methodical and clean. This is a Colts team with Daniel Jones that could be okay in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Colts are going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to sit here and say that this was necessarily the wrong decision. I'm not going to sit here and say that Daniel Jones is going to turn into what he was supposed to be when he was drafted at a Duke by the Giants, right? This is not going to be a great Colts team. This is going to be a Colts team that can win anywhere from 4 to 8 games, maybe 9 games at most, if you talk about this Colts squad, because this is a Colts squad that has that quarterback situation, lost a lot on the offensive line. 2 of their key pieces went over to Minnesota as Daniel Jones came down here and is in the middle of a quarterback controversy. As much as we care on the outside, a lot of what matters is on the inside. And I feel like on the inside, it wasn't really Anthony Richardson's job to win. It was more his not to lose. And he didn't do enough not to lose that job. So at the end of the day, Daniel Jones is your head honcho. Do I think it's going to last the whole season? Probably not. Anthony Richardson probably gets another chance because I don't think this Colts team is good enough as it is with Daniel Jones, but we've seen him do it with less. We saw him do it in the Giants in 2022. There is reason to believe that this could work out. Another offensive guru in Shane Steichen. I don't necessarily think that this is the worst possible move that they could have made. In fact, I agree with this move from a Colts perspective. He was the best quarterback that was there. He was not much better than Anthony Richardson, but he for sure was better and is better than Anthony Richardson right now, who on the side note is also dealing with yet another injury. Anthony Richardson just holds the ball too long. And I am one of the biggest supporters of Anthony Richardson. He was my dark horse for MVP last season. That's how crazy high I was on Anthony Richardson, how crazy good I think an archetype like that can be. But we haven't seen it in the NFL with a guy with not much experience. I think it's good to get experience in the college and high school level, something that Anthony Richardson didn't get, and throwing him into the fire, into the flames, has not worked, at least not in the Colts system. He needs a change of scenery to turn it around. As we've seen, Trey Lance look really good in the preseason with the Chargers, but that took a lot of time, a lot of pit stops, a lot of places where it simply just did not work out. Didn't work out with the Kyle Shanahan system, didn't work out in Dallas. He's a solid backup now, at least what we've seen in preseason, if that is the way it's going to go. Trey Lance and Anthony Richardson, a lot of very similar steps when it comes to their future in the NFL. I believe in Anthony Richardson. I still think he can turn into something, but the numbers don't lie. You don't generally go from one of the worst quarterbacks in NFL history to a competent starter just because you lose your job, just because Daniel Jones is a little bit better than you. And the fact that Daniel Jones is a little bit better than you right now, when you have had time to learn off of the field, get used to it, play football, play more than a full season of NFL football, you should be better than Daniel Jones. You should know how to read a defense and not just rely on your physical skills, your physical gifts, and everything that brought you to this point. That is why the Colts have moved off of Anthony Richardson, and that is why I think that was the right decision, both to save Shane Steichen's job and also for the Colts to be as successful as they possibly can in the upcoming NFL season. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you guys have a thought on Daniel Jones being named the quarterback? Who would you have named in that quarterback competition, and why? I think Daniel Jones, absolutely the right option. But again, who knows? We could always be wrong about that here. Put that in the comments. Give us a follow everywhere. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to John Wall, legend in DC, one of the greatest point guards in Wizards history, one of the greatest players in Wizards history, and a really exciting player that I've seen way too much online disrespect about after he announced his retire in the middle of the afternoon yesterday. We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over everything you need to know about the quarterback situation with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson up in Indianapolis. In this segment, we're going to continue our jaunt around the NFL, take a look at some other big quarterback news, what's going on with the Saints, lots of big trades going on in the NFL as well. All of that coming up here in just a second. But before we do, remember, go check us out everywhere. We're all over the internet. Find us everywhere you could possibly think of on YouTube at Triple Threat Show, Twitch at 3 Threat Show, Instagram at 3 Threat Show _ and on TikTok at _the Triple Threat Show. We are everywhere, as well as everywhere you get your podcasts. So give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Go check us out wherever you possibly can. We're going to talk a little bit about John Wall, though. I know we said we talked some quarterbacks, but we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with John Wall, because John Wall officially hung it up after 11 seasons. The former #1 overall pick out of Kentucky was a absolute firecracker in the NBA, and everything I've seen online is a lot different than what I was expecting, because John Wall was my favorite player growing up. I grew up in Washington, D.C. He was the pride and joy of the Washington Wizards when they were good at basketball. He was what made basketball fun, and he was the most entertaining basketball player that I have ever seen. The way that people talk about Derrick Rose is what I would expect a lot of people to think about John Wall, but instead, his legacy seems to be the fact that he took a whole lot of money, and really didn't do too much with it. But at that time, it was absolutely worth it. He slipped and fell in a bathtub, injured his foot, never was the same, but he was the picture of explosivity, the picture of aggressiveness, the picture of having fun out there on the court. John Wall stepped up in the big moments, in the small moments, and he was Washington, D.C. basketball. That's exactly what exemplified it. They made songs about this man. They have whole intros about this man. He is incredible for the legacy that he's going to have, but the legacy that I've seen online surrounding John Wall is not what I expected. I know him and Bradley Beal, that era kind of crashed out in flames, and no one's going to look back fondly outside of DC on that era because of the way that it ended. But in the moment, there were people talking about the Wizards getting ready to be title contenders. When LeBron hit free agency, there were times when people were expecting him to go and play in DC. Kevin Durant hit free agency. He grew up in DC. You have Wall, you have Beal. Why not go play? That didn't work out. A lot of that has to do with the ownership over there. But that was a very good team, and there needs to be more respect put on John Wall. John Wall finished nearly 20 points per game scorer, nearly 10 assists per game. He was not the greatest three-point shooter, but he didn't need to be. He has plenty of highly memorable moments. That three-point shot that he hits to extend the series to 7 against the Boston Celtics, the furthest that the Wizards ever got in the playoffs in John Wall's tenure over there. And sure, it went down the drain when he left. He played in Houston, he played in LA. It never really was the same, but John Wall will always be a legend in the Washington Wizards organization. John Wall will always be the quintessential Wizard for this generation. He's someone that I think really needs to go back and be studied, because a 5-time All-Star, an All-NBA level player, runner-up in Rookie of the Year to an incredible Blake Griffin season, but he deserves a little bit more respect for what he was able to do on the basketball court, because John Wall was one of the best to ever do it when he was healthy. Just go look up some highlights. Go look up some John Wall highlights, I beg of you, and do not speak ill on one of the greatest point guards of this era in John Wall. He's not going to go down in history that way, because his career went down in smoke. Not excitement. He was a less long-lived Russell Westbrook, someone that flamed out way too early. The way that people talk about Russ now is the way that people are talking about John Wall. But at the time, John Wall was one of the best point guards in all of the NBA. And there needs to be more respect put on his name, because he is special, especially in DC. I'd love to see the Wizards go out and sign him to a one-day contract, let him retire with the organization that he got drafted to, that still loves and adores him over there in DC. I don't think it's going to happen, especially since it has not happened yet, and it's been a little bit of time, and he retired before doing that. But I would love to see, just as a symbolic gesture, have John Wall sign a one-day contract, retire back home in Washington. He's going to go and be an analyst now for the new NBA show that's going on as the new rights take place. Good on him, staying in the public eye. Shout out John Wall. John Wall was one of the best to ever wear a Wizards uniform and really was my favorite player growing up. So shout out John Wall for real. I won't tolerate any John Wall disrespect. Don't do it. You're not allowed. I've decreed no John Wall disrespect is allowed in the comments anywhere that I will see. No John Wall disrespect allowed. But it's not just John Wall going on. There's a lot of big quarterback moves and a couple of trades that took place in the NFL over the course of today. Not too many big ones, but a bunch of wide receivers are on the move. The San Francisco 49ers have had a real black hole when it comes to that wide receiver room. They trade away Debo early on in the offseason. Brandon Ayuk still recovering from a knee injury that he suffered last season. You have Ricky Pearsall, but Juwan Jennings dealing with injuries. They just had Demarcus Robinson get suspended for 3 games with PED, so they don't really have any wide receivers on that roster. To go and fix that, they go and make a trade. They needed to get a wide receiver in the worst possible way. They go out and get Sky Moore, who didn't really work out the way that the Chiefs wanted him to, and I don't expect him to make a huge splash when it comes down to it. But getting Sky Moore and a 7th pick for a 6th round pick is not necessarily the worst value. You'll still have Ricky Pearsall, you still have George Kittle, you still have Christian McCaffrey, you'll have Brandon Ayuk at some point, you'll have Juwan Jennings at some point this season when they get fully healthy. So it's not the end of the world, but the beginning of this season for the 49ers might be a little bit rough, a little bit ragged, as they did not get any wide receivers healthy. Usually it's the running backs who they're also struggling with, of course, as Christian McCaffrey is the only healthy running back in that room. But they need wide receivers. They need one of those skill positions to be there. That wasn't the only trade that took place today. The Broncos also moved off of Devon Vele. They sent him to the Saints for a 4th round pick. Vele and a 7th for a 4th round pick. Vele really came out in the middle of last season. He's someone that I think can step up as a wide receiver 2 to Chris Olave over there with the Saints. He's someone that Sean Payton has compared to Marcus Colston. Now, the Saints quarterback situation is a mess. Is it going to go to Tyler Shuck? That seems to be the betting favorites, but Spencer Rattler is also in there. I don't necessarily think it's a lockdown that it's going to go to Shuck there, although I'm willing to be a little bit more gung-ho on the Shuck train than I am with the other quarterbacks in that room. But getting a guy like Vele, who's a big target for a rookie quarterback, is going to mean a lot for this Saints squad. The Vikings also make a trade, trading defensive tackle Harrison Phillips and a 7th round pick to the Jets for 2 6th round picks. The Jets, they needed some defensive guys, some big boys on the inside. After that defense let a couple of guys go. Javon Kinlaw left this offseason. They needed someone on the inside. They get that in Harrison Phillips. Formerly a Bill, returns to his home division to play for the Jets. And another big guy on the move, Juwan Briggs, and a 7th round pick to the Jets for a 6th round pick. Like I said, the Jets needed to get a couple of interior linemen. They go and get that done. But as the NFL season continues to ratchet up, there is a lot to like. There is a lot to look forward to. We will keep an eye on all the trades for you. We will keep you updated as time goes on. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention over to the AFC South. We continue previewing each and every single division. That is coming up next here on the Triple Threat Show. Welcome back to the Triple Threat Show. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, what are you doing, guys? You missed half the show. We're 30 minutes in. We covered all the biggest quarterback news. What's going on in New Orleans? Daniel Jones named the QB1 over in Indianapolis over Anthony Richardson. We talked about the legacy of John Wall in DC as he calls it quits after a 5-time All-Star in 11 seasons. John Wall, no longer a member of the NBA, just a member of the NBA media. In this segment, we're going to take a look at the AFC South, one of the more interesting divisions, at least in my mind, when we talk about who is going to win it, because the Texans have won this division two times in a row at this point. They have been the dominant force in that division. It was a battle between them and the Colts for a while. The Titans were in there for a little bit under Ryan Tannehill, Mike Vrabel, and Derrick Henry, but ever since CJ Stroud stepped in, it has been the Texans' division to lose. We saw that the last 2 seasons. Can they get it done again? That's the big question for them. For the Colts, we talked about a lot of the questions. What's going to happen with Anthony Richardson in that quarterback situation? Can the Colts finally get a lockdown answer at quarterback? They're like the Steelers, except a little bit more unstable and not good defensively over the last couple years, really ever since Andrew Luck retired. The Titans, what's Cam Ward going to look like? We haven't heard a lot of noise out of Tennessee. The Titans, of course, drafted Cam Ward at the number 1 overall pick, and he looked pretty solid in preseason. Cam Ward did. I can't really remember another first overall pick that got this little amount of coverage when it came to what's going on with him. How's it going to go? I don't understand the lack of coverage for him, but that might be a good thing. The pressure is off. He just needs to go out and play great football, although I don't think pressure ever affects Cam Ward with the way that he plays. The Jaguars, what's going on with Trevor Lawrence? Can an offensive coordinator at head coach finally make him do something productive in the NFL? He's been good. He's led teams to the playoffs before, but he has not really been able to get anything consistent done. His coaching situation has not necessarily been the best. Goes from Urban Meyer, which we're just not going to count as a year in the NFL, all the way to Doug Peterson, who Peterson is a solid head coach, a coach that's won a Super Bowl, brought them to the playoffs, but clearly was not the answer for the Jaguars. Can Liam Cohen be the answers? Are the Jaguars going to be able to do that? We'll answer all those questions. We talked about the Colts, so let's start with them here. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't think this is a Colts team that's going to get it done. They won 8 games last year, and they lost a little bit. They lost 2 of their starters on the offensive line to the Minnesota Vikings. That quarterback situation is a mess. That wide receiver situation, as much as I like Michael Pittman, as much as A.D. Mitchell has shown flashes, those guys just cannot seem to get it done right now. Maybe Pittman, who's shown flashes before of being a productive wide receiver, can get it done, but relying on A.D. Mitchell is going to be a boat that is going to get you sunk. You're going to sink if you rely on him because he has yet to prove that he can do it against elite NFL competition. He's a very good receiver. He's got great routes. He just can't get open in time, in structure, and because of that, he is just not a guy that I trust getting the ball to. It just has not worked out so far for the Colts. I don't really love so far what's going on. I do like bringing in bringing in Lou Anarumo to be the new defensive coordinator for this Colts team. They needed a shakeup over there, and I think that was something that's going to do a lot because I don't think it was his fault that the Bengals defense was bad. It was just kind of bad. You didn't really have anything, and you're seeing that again this year as the Bengals defense continues to get worse, but they start off that season rough against the Dolphins, against the Broncos, the Titans, the Rams, and the Raiders. I have them all down as losses, starting off 0-5 here. Not the way to go. Maybe at that point we see Anthony Richardson come back in, although I'm not sure how small of a leash Daniel Jones is going to have. The Dolphins, when they're healthy, their offense is just that good. I trust Tua to go out and get a quick win against on the road in a dome against the Dolphins here. We talk about the Broncos. That defense is going to be just a clamp for this Colts team. I don't think they're going to be able to get it done. Cam Ward at home The Titans, the first division game for the Titans, I think having that home field advantage, I think it's going to mean a lot. And I think that home field is going to be enough for the Colts to lose as they struggle in division games on the road. The Rams, I think, are a top 5 team in the NFL. The Colts aren't going to stand a chance over there. And the Raiders, I like Ashton Genty. I like what that team is doing offensively, and I really do like Geno Smith, a top 10 quarterback in my eyes. That's a guy that I think is going to mean a lot for them. Because of that, I have the Colts losing those first 5 games of the season. They face the Cardinals next at home. They've got to catch a break somewhere. I think this is a Cardinals team that's very beatable and a defense under Lou Anarumo that has the ability to stop the run, has the ability to slow down Kyler Murray. I think that's a win for them in the books. Then another tough one. Playoff team at the Chargers. This is not an easy schedule. They take on the AFC West, one of the best divisions in football from last year, as well as taking on the NFC South. It just is, the NFC West. It just really is not a good division combination for them. The Titans, they'll split that series with them. They get a win. At the Steelers, these two teams very similar. I'll give the nod to the Colts. They go over to Germany to face the Falcons, and I just like Penix too much. That pass rush, just a little too much. I'm taking them. Remember, the Chiefs, Texans, Jaguars, they really struggle in Jacksonville. They haven't won there in over 10 years. That's another loss. A Seahawks team with a high-powered offense. The 49ers on Monday Night Football. This is just not a schedule that is stacking up for them. All in all, I have this Colts team finishing 5-12. On the year. This is a Colts team that, like I said, could have a ceiling of 8 or 9 wins if everything goes well with Daniel Jones, if Anthony Richardson comes back and figures out how to hit the easy stuff, because God knows we have seen him hit the hard stuff. If he's able to do that, this is what we are going to see. A Colts team that could win 9 games-ish, potentially sneak their way into the playoffs, be exactly where they've been in that purgatory of good but not great, that 14-17 pick that they've been picking at for these last couple of seasons, not really getting anything they need. Again, another Steelers-esque situation. I think this is what they need. Time to blow it up. Time to let everything go. I expect Shane Steichen to be fired at the end of the season. Although, I don't think this record changes too much with or without Daniel Jones at quarterback, honestly. I have him going 5-12, missing out on the playoffs, of course, being one of the worst teams in football. The Titans are really interesting. Again, we previewed them with the question, what is Cam Ward going to look like? Because Cam Ward has a real tough test to open up the season at the Broncos, who I think is the best defense in the NFL. Cam Ward, is the only quarterback that I have ever seen not sweat a single beat of sweat on the football field. He is so cool, calm, collected at all times, but can he do that against a really good pass rush, against a really good secondary with reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Pat Surtain over there? Can he get it done? Calvin Ridley and him have a really nice connection, but the beginning of that season is rough. At the Broncos, taking on the Rams, two teams that I think are going to be very good and put a lot of pressure on him. The Colts, a division game, another playoff team in the Texans, another division game, and then you get the Cardinals, the Raiders, the Patriots, and the Colts to maybe balance it out a little bit. Playing a 4th place schedule, it's going to be a little bit tough for this Titans team to have the kind of season that people might want Cam Ward to have. I don't expect them to be as bad as last year, right? This is a Titans team that was the worst team in the NFL last year, obviously had that number 1 overall pick, but I also don't think that Cam Ward is going to have a CJ Stroud type season, a Jaden Daniels type season, where he's going to turn this team into a playoff team, a team that can win playoff games, not just make the playoffs like that. It's not going to be that easy for this Titans squad. Because of that, this is a Titans team in Cam Ward that is looking to maybe just win 2 or 3 more games than they have. And I think they have the ability to do that, right? Outside of the beginning of that schedule, the Broncos, the Rams, the Texans in the first 4 weeks. That is a brutal start. But after that, it kind of relaxes a little bit. You get a couple division games. You get the Patriots, who could be a lot better. The Chargers, another playoff team. The Seahawks, who I think are going to take a bit of a step back. The Browns, the Browns to end the schedule with the Saints and the Jaguars. There are winnable games here. Now, that's not to say that this is an easy schedule. Again, they have to go out and take a look. They have to go out and play against the AFC West. They have to go out and play against the NFC West as well. The two West divisions they have to go up against. That's the Chiefs, that's the Chargers, that's the Broncos, that's the 49ers, that's the Rams, that's the Seahawks, right? These are some really, really tough conferences, tough teams that they have to go up against, not to mention playing not the easiest fourth place team overall. It's not going to be easy. And I'm not going to pretend that it's going to be easy, but I do think there's going to be a lot of positives to take away. Mehrob in the chat asking if this is going to be like a Trevor Lawrence kind of thing. I don't necessarily think you can compare Trevor Lawrence's rookie season to anything else just because it was Urban Meyer. Now, is he going to be like Trevor Lawrence? I think he's got everything in his bag to be like Trevor Lawrence, although I don't know what people might think of Trevor Lawrence. I have a higher view on Trevor Lawrence than I think a lot of other people do. The Titans, of course, have an okay offensive line. They have players on the defense if they can stay healthy, although I don't necessarily think that defense is going to be world beaters. But we've seen them play competitive last year against a couple of teams, getting another year of Brian Callahan, although I don't necessarily think he is the right head coach. I don't like Zach Taylor, and getting someone from that Zach Taylor tree a chip off the old block of an unstable block is not necessarily going to be the greatest chip that you can get, although I am ready to be proven wrong because there's nothing that Brian Callahan has done that is necessarily bad, but I do think Cam Ward is going to hide a little bit of these issues. I think he's going to be able to stand strong in the pocket. I'm a little worried about his athleticism because he likes to extend the plays a lot. I want to see him play in structure a little bit. I think this is a Titans team that's going to be improved, and most importantly, I don't think this is going to be the worst team in the NFL. That is a successful season for this Titans squad. I have them going 6-11 this year, missing out on the playoffs, but this is where it gets interesting in this division because the Texans are not running away with this division. The Texans are not running away with it because they have the worst offensive line in the entire country. The worst offensive line in the entire country. It is borderline criminal what they are subjecting their incredible quarterback CJ Stroud to behind that offensive line. They trade away their best offensive lineman this offseason for a bag of pennies, and that's about it, right? They have nobody. They drafted one offensive lineman. It was in the second round. They needed to address that position, and they failed at it. That being said, the offensive line was also doo-doo garbage and crap last season. It was very, very bad. It was very bad last season, and yet they found a way to win 10 games. They found a way into the playoffs. They're dealing with a lot of injuries. Joe Mixon, his availability is in question. And behind him, Nick Chubb, how is he going to be coming off of yet another pretty bad knee injury? At the wide receiver position, Tank Dell will miss the entire season. Can Nico Collins, who I think is a top 5 wide receiver in this league, stay healthy long enough for this team to rely on him the way that they need to? They lose Stephon Diggs. Again, they make a big trade for him, and then they reduce his contract to just 1 year. He's free to go to the Patriots, and they don't really get anything for him. Another questionable move by this Texans front office, but still, this is CJ Stroud. And whenever you have a top 10 quarterback, whenever you have an elite level quarterback, there is a chance for the Texans to do something because CJ Stroud is that kind of player, right? The Texans, they start off the season rough. The Rams, the Bucks, the Jags, another division game there, not necessarily going to be easy. The Titans get a little bit of a break there. Then they have to face the Ravens. That is their first place schedule game, a tough one. They face the 49ers, the Broncos, of course, as they go up against the Bills and the Chiefs. This is not an easy schedule, but this is a team that has found a way to win a playoff game now 2 years in a row with CJ Stroud. I trust in this defense. I love what Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are going to be able to do, wreaking havoc. As long as CJ Stroud can survive the season, this is a Texans team that yet again is in the driver's seat of their division. It's not a guarantee that he's going to survive the season either, and that is the scary part because when he is in there under that kind of pressure, he is going to be turned into David Carr, right? The first quarterback for the Texans, a quarterback that has the record for being sacked the most times in the NFL because the offensive line was so bad. You need to invest in the guys up front. That is how you give your quarterback time. The run game is not good enough to make the time itself, and you just got a bunch of old guys in that backfield. Is Nick Chubb going to have it? I don't really think so. You can rely on Nico Collins all you want, but you can turn your guys around. You can turn your guys and just face Nico Collins, kind of like how teams were playing the Cowboys last season, and that's what I'm a little bit worried with this Texans team. Mehrob in the comments asks, is Derek Stingley prep for a breakout year? Absolutely. Yes, he's already broken out. He was an all pro talent last year. He's been named to the all pro team multiple times this already in his young career. He's been paid. Derek Stingley absolutely has already broken out, and he is. We talk about that defense for the Texans. That's the reason why they have a chance at being good, because you have Will Anderson, because you have Danielle Hunter, because you have Derek Stingley on the outside playing corner. They have an elite secondary. It's not just Stingley. It's the other guys in that secondary. You're talking about Kamari Lassiter, who is really, really good. Maybe not an all-pro level guy, but really, really good. Everywhere you look on that defense, maybe outside of the linebacker position, is elite. But the question is, can CJ Stroud survive another season behind an even worse offensive line than what they had at the beginning of last year? I am not certain, and I'm never going to wish injuries or speak injuries on, so I'm doing my prediction with the thought that CJ Stroud plays a full 17 games. A bye week real early on in week 6 of this season might not be the best for them, although it is after the Ravens, so maybe getting a break there after a brutal loss I think might be good for them. I have them going 10-7. Is that enough to make the playoffs? Is that enough to win the division? That's a good question, because the Jacksonville Jaguars are next up on our list. And this is a Jaguars team that, as we kind of mentioned with Trevor Lawrence, could be really good. We have not seen Trevor Lawrence with an offensive-minded head coach. He had Urban Meyer. Throw that one out the window. He had Doug Peterson. We can keep that one in the picture. It worked a little bit. It didn't work a little bit. He was dealing with injuries, but he has one of the most special arms in the NFL. He is a guy that has consistently raised this Jaguars team higher than they should be, and that is saying a lot, because this Jaguars team has not been good. Bringing in Brian Thomas Jr., who had a top 5 wide receiver season last year based on yardage as a rookie, pairing him up with Travis Hunter, who's going to play both ways. This is a very good Jaguars team. I like them a lot. They're going to surprise a lot of people. I think they're one of those teams that's going to improve the most. Is it enough to dethrone the Texans, or are the Texans going to find a way to back into the playoffs yet again? I don't know, because this is the Jaguars team that it really depends on how Liam Cohen and how Travis Etienne, Tanks Bigsby, Bishal Tootin, and that run game come together. I believe in the Jaguars. I am huge in on the Jaguars. I'm buying a lot of Jaguars stock, but again, it's a very tough schedule. You talk about taking on the Bengals, who are just going to simply outscore you. It doesn't matter with how bad that defense is going to be. With taking on the AFC West, the Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders, the NFC West, the Niners, Rams, Seahawks, Cardinals. This is not an easy schedule again, and I feel like a broken record saying it over and over and over again, but this is a Jaguars team that, if they win the games that they're supposed to win, can absolutely put a target on the Texans' back. It is not going to be easy for them, but I do think they have a ceiling of about 10 wins, a floor of, well, it could go poorly, about 5 wins, honestly. But I'm going to go more towards the ceiling for this Jaguar squad. 9-8 overall on the season for them. I believe Trevor Lawrence is going to have a very good season. Now, is it going to be an MVP level season? No. Is it going to be enough to make the playoffs? It'll be tight. They might squeeze in that wild card spot, but it would be a 7 seed in the wild card. It depends on how the schedule shakes out for the Broncos down the stretch, because that's gonna be a playoff game right there. The Jaguars taking on the Broncos over there late in the season. Week 16 could really make a difference for who make the playoffs and who ends up missing it. But a lot more than that game have to go right. I believe in this team. I've had belief in Trevor Lawrence for a while. He was the prince that was promised, the next big thing in the NFL, the guy coming out of Clemson, a guy that's known nothing but success until he reached the NFL level. And instead, it's been a big heaping helping of failure after failure after failure when he reached the NFL ranks. I'm leaning towards the Texans to win this division. And in years past, it's been a battle between the Texans and the Colts. I think this is the year where the Jags step up, make a real tough division race yet again, because without having protection for CJ Stroud, it's just going to be a mess when it comes to the Texans overall. They should run away with this division. They should. They're the best team in this division by a pretty wide margin when you take in consideration the offensive situation with their quarterback and the defense that they have, which is going to be one of the better ones in the NFL. Maybe top 5 kind of situation for that defense. But again, if that other team has any kind of pass rush, if they can get on quickly to CJ Stroud, and if they have any way to cover Nico Collins, maybe triple cover him, with the way that running game is going to be, it's not going to be easy for the Texans to win games. So I think there's a real shot that the Jaguars find a way out of this division, but I'm leaning with the Texans for now, taking this division by just a game over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Final standings: Texans at 10-7, Jaguars at 9-8, the Titans at 6-11, and the Colts at 5-12. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts, though. What's your standing? What's your order? What's your record prediction? How wrong am I? Let me know, and I'll tell you why you're wrong. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Triple Threat Show. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back on Friday, previewing Week 0 of the college football season. MLB power rankings, pretenders, contenders, who is going to win the World Series. We'll talk about all of that and much more. Remember to check us out everywhere you get your podcasts. That's Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. YouTube at Triple Threat Show, Twitch at 3 Threat Show, Instagram at 3 Threat Show _, and on TikTok at _Triple Threat Show. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye-bye.